This happened just a few months ago. I was 32 and moved back to my childhood home after my parents passed away. I thought it would be comforting to be there, surrounded by old memories. The house sat at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by tall trees. The wooden floors creaked as I walked and the smell of old wood hung in the air. It took me back in time. On my first night I was ready to sleep. But a soft knocking came from the attic. At first I thought it was just the house settling. I said, "It's just an old house." But the knocking got louder. I couldn't sleep. My heart raced like it was trying to match the rhythm. I got up to check, and it stopped. I sat on the bed, confused. As the nights went by, the sounds changed. The knocking became shuffling noises followed by whispers. I couldn't understand the words, just soft echoes floating around. I tried to shake it off as my imagination. But I was alone now, surrounded by silence that felt heavy. Goosebumps ran down my arms at times. By the third night, the lights in the hallway flickered. I thought, it's old wiring. But as I walked down that hall, I felt something else. I thought I saw shadows moving. I blinked, and they were gone. I felt uneasy. Something was wrong. Then I noticed the photographs on the mantel. They were family photos I'd seen all my life, but they looked different. They seemed a bit shifted, enough for me to notice. I stared at them one night until a deep weight filled the air. My hands shook as I put them back. The tapping then changed again. It felt like knocking, almost like someone wanted my attention. One night, I thought I heard my name muffled in the whispers. "Liam." I froze. I didn't know who was calling or what it wanted. I considered going to the attic, but I couldn't move. My heart raced and my palms were sweaty. That last night was the worst. I stood in the living room and heard a voice. Then, everything went silent. The room felt like it was pressing in on me. I turned to the hallway and just knew. I wasn't alone anymore. Then, the knocking stopped. I stood alone in the dark. I listened to the silence, trying to feel what I didn't understand. It was a cold, thick silence. I felt the house was trying to tell me something important. I couldn't make sense of it. After that night, I couldn't stay there anymore. I left, but questions haunted me. Had I missed something? What was the house trying to show me? The feeling still lingers in my mind, troubling and unanswered. I didn't go back to the house for weeks. I stayed with a friend in town, but the memories haunted me. I kept imagining the knocking, the whispers, and the shadows. Each night, I'd lie awake, the fear creeping back every time I closed my eyes. One afternoon, I decided I had to face it. I drove back, my heart pounding with every mile. The house looked the same, silent and still, but a chill ran through me. I parked and took a deep breath. Maybe I could find some answers. Inside, the air felt different, more charged. The familiar creaks of the floorboards echoed under my feet. I walked slowly, letting myself take it all in. Each room held memories, both sweet and sour, but the attic loomed above me like a dark cloud. I had to know what was up there. Climbing the narrow stairs, I felt the temperature drop. I hesitated before opening the attic door. It creaked loudly, and I braced myself for whatever awaited inside. When I stepped in, the small space was filled with dust motes drifting in a slant of light. Old boxes sat stacked against the walls, and a forgotten trunk sat in the corner. I moved toward it, curiosity overpowering my fear. The trunk was old, its leather cracked. On top lay a fading photograph of my parents from years ago. They looked so young and happy. I lifted the photograph, feeling a sense of longing. But when I turned it over, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A note. It was hastily written, the handwriting shaky. "Find the truth before it's too late." A shiver ran down my spine. I didn't like the sound of that. I pocketed the note and started rummaging through the trunk. Old clothes, toys from my childhood, and letters appeared, but nothing felt significant. Just more memories. Then I found a small, ornate box hidden under the clothes. I opened it, and inside was a delicate locket. It looked familiar. On one side was a picture of me as a child, and on the other, a figure I didn't recognize. The eyes were dark, almost hollow. Instinctively, I closed the locket, unease settling in my gut. That's when I heard it. A faint whisper at first, then a clearer voice. Liam. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't alone. Panic surged through me. I stumbled backward, knocking over a box, and in an instant, the attic plunged into darkness. The whispering grew louder, swirling around me like a fog. Find the truth. I felt a presence behind me, cold and heavy. I couldn't see, but I knew something was there. I had to get out. I rushed back to the door, pulling it open and spilling out into the hallway. The house felt alive, pulsing with energy. I ran down the stairs, heart racing, desperate to escape. As I reached for the front door, I paused. There was a reflection in the hallway mirror. I glanced back, and my heart dropped. In the mirror stood a shadowy figure behind me, eyes locked on mine. Then everything went black. When the darkness faded, I found myself on the living room floor, cold wood against my back. I blinked up at the ceiling, disoriented. The house was silent again, but an unsettling weight lingered in the air. Had I just imagined it all? I pushed myself up, the memories of the whisper and the figure flooding back. My heart raced. I wasn't safe yet. I could still feel the echoes of what had happened in the attic, but I knew I had to get out. I scrambled to my feet and rushed to the front door. As I fumbled with the lock, something caught my eye, a glimmer on the floor. I bent down and picked up a small object. It was a key, old and tarnished, but it had an intricate design on it that looked like it belonged to the ornate box I had found earlier. My pulse quickened. Suddenly, it felt as if I was part of something larger than myself. I looked back at the hallway, the mirror reflecting my anxious face. The memory of the shadowy figure surged back. I was unsure about the lock, but curiosity gripped me again. What did this key unlock? I hesitated only for a moment before I turned and headed back toward the attic. Each step was deliberate, and I felt a mix of trepidation and determination. As I climbed the stairs, the temperature dropped again, and an uneasy sensation washed over me. Reaching the attic door, I found it slightly ajar, creaking ominously. I pushed it open and stepped inside. This time the atmosphere felt charged, as if the walls were holding their breath. I approached the trunk again, the key steady in my palm. My heart began to race in anticipation. With trembling hands, I unlocked the small ornate box. The lid creaked open, revealing nothing but a faded note, nearly torn and crumpled. I unfolded it carefully. It was a list, the words barely legible through age. 1. The first voice. 2. The reflection. 3. The forgotten pact. The truth beneath the surface. I stared at the list, confusion whirling in my mind. What voices? What pact? I was about to question what it all meant when I heard it again. A whisper, sharper this time. Find the truth. The whispering filled the room, swirling around me once more. The attic felt like it was closing in, the shadows lengthening. My heart raced again as I felt the same cold presence behind me. I turned, and despite the lengthening shadows, I saw a shimmer of movement, something darting in the corner of my vision. I instinctively stepped back, but I didn't have a plan. I could either bolt, but leaving felt wrong. The answers were here. I had to find out more. That's when I saw it, illuminated eerily by the fading light. A locket on the floor, just like the one I had found earlier. Only this one was open, and inside was a picture of a woman. It had to mean something. Before I could process it, the whispers crescendoed into a violent rush, drowning out my thoughts. I stumbled back, and as I turned toward the stairs, I heard a voice, this time directly behind me. You can't run from the truth. I froze, terror gripping my throat. The chill grew heavier, and I knew I was not alone. I had to uncover the secrets lurking in the shadows, or I would never escape this nightmare. I struggled to breathe, each exhale hitching in my chest as the voice echoed in my ears. It was a sound I couldn't shake, a deep chill crawling up my spine. I turned back cautiously, facing whatever unseen presence was looming over me. The attic felt alive, the shadows swirling ominously. The box lay open before me. The faded note rested there like a taunt. I had to make sense of it, I had to know what the voices were and why they called to me. My hands trembled as I picked up the locket. The woman inside it looked familiar, though I was sure I had never seen her before. I flipped it over, searching for any inscription. Just as I thought there was nothing, I noticed worn initials scribbled on the back. E.M. Who was this person? My mind raced, piecing together fragments of memories I couldn't quite grasp. The whispers circled once more, stronger this time. I pressed my palms against my ears, desperate to shut out the sound. But in doing so, I felt the cold rush of air slide past me, making me shiver uncontrollably. I knew I had to move, to find a way out. But something held me there, rooted in place. Then I remembered the note. The first voice. I had to find it, I had to connect the dots. Quickly I glanced around the attic, searching for anything that might lead me to an answer. My eyes caught a glimpse of a dusty mirror tucked away in the corner. It was small and cracked, but it felt important. As I approached the mirror, the atmosphere shifted. It felt heavier, charged with an expectation I couldn't understand. I took a deep breath and stood in front of it, the locket clutched tight in my hand. I whispered, "Show me." Nothing happened at first, but then the glass shimmered and warped. For a fleeting moment I thought I saw the woman's reflection, standing right beside me. Her face was twisted in anguish. I gasped and took a step back, my heart pounding. The whispers grew frenzied, calling out urgently. "Look closer, find the truth." Without thinking, I reached out a hand, touching the surface of the mirror. Instantly, a jolt surged through my body. Images flooded my mind. Glimpses of a house full of laughter and then chaos and shadows closing in. Then I saw her, the woman from the locket, pleading for help. I staggered back as her voice pierced through the haze. "You must finish what was started. You're the only one who can break the cycle." Panic rose in my chest. I had no idea what she meant. I had come searching for answers, but this only raised more questions. The shadows around me twisted violently, and I felt an overwhelming urge to flee. But I couldn't. I had to know what this cycle was and why I was tied to it. Suddenly, the door to the attic slammed shut behind me with a thunderous bang. I whirled around, dread pooling in my stomach. As I pressed my back against the cold mirror, the whispers faded, leaving an eerie silence hanging in the air. Time was running out. I had to figure out how to escape this place and confront whatever truth awaited me. But no matter where I turned, something loomed behind me, watching, waiting. The weight of history felt like a noose. I stood frozen, heart racing, knowing I had to act before the darkness swallowed me whole. The silence felt suffocating. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to move, to think, to escape. The attic was a maze of shadows, and panic gnawed at my insides. I focused on the mirror again. Maybe it held the next clue I needed. I stepped closer, my reflection wavering as fear twisted around me like a noose. This time I didn't wait for the mirror to respond. I pressed my palm against the glass again, hoping for another surge of insight. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, almost pleading. The surface rippled, and suddenly I was not alone. The room blurred around me, and I was thrown into memory. A child's laughter echoed, bright and cheerful, but it felt faded, distant. I saw a glimpse of the house filled with light, and then darkness seeped in, swallowing it whole. Shadows flickered near the edges of my vision, creeping closer. I pulled away, trembling again, desperate to ground myself in reality. "I need to get out," I muttered. I turned back to the door, heart racing with every thought of escape. I rushed toward it, rattling the doorknob, but it didn't budge. Panic surged through my veins as I pounded on the door. "Let me out," my voice echoed back, mocking me, telling me I was trapped. Then I froze. Was it my imagination, or did I hear something behind me? A soft rustle, like fabric brushing against wood. My heart pounded louder, drowning out all reason. I turned slowly, scanning the attic for the source. That's when I saw it, a piece of paper fluttering near the edge of the mirror. Cautiously I approached, tension humming in the air. The whispers, faint but present, began to return, urging me to understand. I picked up the paper, fingers shaking. It was another note different from the first. The ink was smudged, but one phrase was clear. The truth lies in the remnants. My mind raced. What remnants? Before I could think, movement caught my eye. A shadow darted across the far wall, something I couldn't fully make out. It didn't feel like a figment of my imagination. My breath hitched again, and I stepped back, clutching the note tightly. Instinct screamed at me to get out, to run, but curiosity pulled me forward. Maybe this shadow held the key to the cycle the woman in the locket spoke about. My resolve hardened despite my aching chest. I couldn't ignore it. I had to confront it. I steeled myself and called into the darkness, "Show yourself!" The attic fell silent again, but not before I felt a chill sweep through the air. That's when everything went dark. It was sudden and complete, leaving me standing in a void. No light, no sound, just the overwhelming weight of silence. I staggered with the realization that the shadows were not just behind me but everywhere. Fear clawed at my heart. What had I done? What emerged from the darkness? I needed to find out, or I might never escape. I stood there in the blackness, feeling the air grow heavy around me. It was as if the shadows themselves had come alive, pressing against my skin. I tried to call for help, but my voice felt trapped in my throat. The silence was deafening, almost mocking. Then a small glimmer caught my attention just ahead of me. With nothing but instinct to guide me, I took a cautious step forward. My heart raced as I reached out into the darkness, fingers trembling. Maybe there was a way to find light amidst this endless void. As I extended my hand, I felt something cool and solid. I recognized it immediately, a wooden chair, one that had always been in the attic. I took a deep breath, grounding myself in the familiar texture. It was a reminder that I wasn't entirely lost. Just as I was about to move away, I heard that rustling sound again, though this time it was louder, more insistent. It seemed to be coming from somewhere above me. I tilted my head, straining to hear over the pounding of my heart. The noise grew closer, like someone or something was shifting around in the darkness. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. There was no response, just that terrible silence that felt alive around me. I took another step forward, cautious this time. With each movement, the air thickened, wrapping around me as I edged toward where I thought the sound had originated. I blinked repeatedly, hoping for a flicker of light, but none came. The darkness seemed impenetrable. Suddenly, a cold breath washed over my neck, chilling me to my core. At that moment, the shadows shifted, revealing a faint outline, a figure standing just beyond the reach of my sight. My breath caught. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was frozen in place. "Please," I whispered, although I wasn't sure what I was pleading for. I just wanted to know if it was real. The outline began to move, slowly, almost gliding across the floorboards. "What do you want?" The rustling sound intensified, as if I had disturbed something that would rather remain hidden. A small beam of light fought its way through an unseen crack, illuminating part of the figure. I could make out the silhouette of a woman. Her hair was long and cascading, but her facial features were obscured by shadow. "Help," the figure murmured, her voice barely a whisper. It was a plea that sent a shiver down my spine. I strained to hear more, but the weight of darkness pressed down, swallowing the words whole. I took a tentative step closer, compelled by an urgency I couldn't name. "What do you need?" I asked. But before she could respond, the light flickered and faded away into pitch darkness again. Panic surged through me. Was she gone? I felt my way back to the edge of the attic, my fingertips brushing against the wall. Another rustle echoed from the corner behind me. "Stay away!" I yelled, loathing the tremor in my voice. The figure was back, moving swiftly as if the darkness itself was bending to her will. "Please, just tell me what you want." But then, before I could grasp what was happening, the wall beside me cracked open slightly. A narrow shaft of light pierced through, illuminating a dusty wooden box tucked away in the corner. My hand instinctively reached out toward it. What secrets could it hold? With a racing heart, I stepped forward, drawn to it against my will. The shadows coiled around me, but I couldn't turn away now. What I found in that box might be the answers I needed, or the beginning of something far worse. I hesitated for just a moment as I approached the box. My hand shook slightly as I brushed away the cobwebs that clung to it. The wood was old, rough under my fingertips, and strangely warm despite the cold air around me. An unsettling feeling settled deep in my stomach. With one swift motion, I lifted the lid. Dust scattered into the air like tiny stars. My heart raced as I peered inside, half expecting something to jump out at me. Instead, I found an assortment of items: a weathered journal, a tarnished locket, and a small, intricately carved figurine. I reached for the journal first. Its leather cover was cracked, and I could hardly make out the title. As I turned the pages, the faint smell of old paper wafted up. The handwriting was spidery and shaky, but I could make out snippets. It spoke of a woman who had lived in this house long before me. A woman who seemed to have a connection to the attic and, somehow, to the shadows that danced here. Suddenly a loud thump echoed through the attic and I jumped, nearly dropping the journal. My eyes darted around, searching for the source of the noise. I didn't feel alone anymore. The shadows thickened around me, a tangible presence that suffocated my breath. "Is someone there?" I called out, desperately hoping for an answer. My voice trembled, and I hated that it did. No response came, but the rustling returned. This time it was accompanied by a whisper that brushed against my ear. "Find me." I froze again. Who was asking for help? Was it the figure from before? Was it the woman in the journal? I knew I should leave, yet something drew me deeper into the attic's heart. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was meant to uncover whatever was tied to this place. I turned my attention back to the box, searching for what other secrets it held. I noticed the locket next. It was heavier than I expected, and a chill ran down my spine as I opened it. Inside were two tiny photographs, one of a young girl, the other of a woman who looked strikingly similar to the figure I'd seen. They shared the same striking eyes, a piercing blue that seemed to watch me even in the dim light. "Who are you?" I whispered, staring at their faces. Just as I began to feel the weight of their gaze, another thump rang out, louder and more urgent than before. The box rattled and I nearly recoiled. Something was happening outside my field of vision, something I was not sure I wanted to see. The shadows flickered again, blocking my view of the attic entrance. I could feel my pulse race as I turned to look behind me. That's when I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye, movement. The figure was back, stepping toward me with an elongated stride, her eyes now glowing faintly through the darkness. I gripped the locket tightly, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Whatever this presence wanted, I had to find out before it was too late. "Wait!" I cried, my voice barely above a whisper. "Please don't go." But the figure raised a hand, and just as swiftly as she had appeared, the shadows consumed her. I stood alone, breathless, the weight of the journal and locket grounding me, their secrets hanging heavy in the air. I realized whatever lay ahead was more than just a mystery. It was a confrontation with the past, and I was in over my head. I felt the darkness closing in around me, a thick fog that blurred the edges of my vision. My mind raced, teetering between fear and curiosity. The journal and locket weighed heavily in my hands, and the whispers in the air stirred something deep within me. A longing to understand, to know what had happened here. I took a step back from the box. The noise I had heard earlier, the thump, the rumblings, what if they were connected to the stories hidden in these artifacts? It seemed reckless to stay, yet I couldn't leave just yet. Panic swirled in my stomach, and I forced myself to breathe deeply. I turned my attention back to the journal, flipping through its delicate pages, searching for anything that could give me insight into the figure I'd glimpsed. It wasn't long before I found a passage that caught my eye. "The shadows will guide you to the truth, but beware. Some truths are not meant to be uncovered." A chill washed over me. What did that mean? Had the woman who wrote this journal faced something similar? It felt like a warning. I hesitated, but the lure of the truth was too strong. I glanced around the attic, half expecting the figure to return. Just as I prepared to stand, I caught a glimmer out of the corner of my eye. My breath hitched as I noticed the carved figurine on the box. I hadn't examined it closely before. It depicted a woman, her features hauntingly familiar. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against the cool wood. As I lifted it, another noise rippled through the attic, a series of soft thumps that seemed to echo from the other side of the room. My heart raced again. I strained to hear, dread pooling in my stomach. Then, without thinking, I called out, "Is there anyone there?" My voice shook. No one answered. The shadows danced along the walls, teasing my senses, and I felt the temperature drop. I turned back to the figurine. There had to be something more to it. It felt significant. It was then that I noticed an inscription on the base, barely legible in the dim light. I squinted and read aloud, "To find your path, you must embrace the past." Suddenly another loud thump came from the entrance. I whirled around, dread coiling back at the nape of my neck. A dark silhouette filled the doorway, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. My instincts screamed for me to run, but I couldn't tear my gaze away from the figure. "Who are you?" I called out, each word trembling. The figure stepped slightly into the light, just enough for me to see her features. She looked identical to the woman in the locket. My breathing faltered as she smiled, a sad, knowing expression gracing her face. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. That was it. My mind reeled. I was about to step forward when the shadows shifted around the doorway, distorting her image. My heart sank. If I didn't act quickly, I might lose her for good. Before I could think, I stumbled toward her, gripping the locket tightly. "Wait!" But as I reached the threshold into darkness, everything went black. I felt the world shift beneath me, and for a brief moment I was weightless. Everything spun, and then there was silence. I blinked, trying to adjust my eyes to the sudden darkness. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel the remnants of fear tingling at the edges of my mind. It was eerily quiet. No thumps, no whispers, just an unsettling stillness that pressed in around me. As I pushed myself up from an unseen surface, I realized I wasn't in the attic anymore. It felt like standing in a void, with shadows swirling like smoke. I could see nothing but the outline of my hands in front of me, and stranger still, I could hear a faint echo of my own breath. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking. There was no response. The silence felt heavier now, almost suffocating. Trying to gather my thoughts, I focused on the journal and the locket still clutched in my hands. I needed to steady myself in this unknown terrain. I recalled the words from the journal. "To find your path, you must embrace the past." What did that mean? Perhaps this was another layer of the mystery. As if summoned by my thoughts, a dim light flickered into existence. It illuminated a narrow path stretching ahead into the darkness. The light pulsed softly, inviting yet foreboding. I glanced back, but the shadows behind me had grown denser, obscuring what lay there. I felt a pull toward the light. With a shaky breath, I stepped forward, each footfall echoing around me like a heartbeat. Moments later, flickering shapes began to dance along the walls, shimmering images that reminded me of the figurine. Suddenly, the environment shifted again. The path opened into a vast chamber, filled with floating images and memories. A chill ran down my spine as I recognized scenes from my childhood. My family, my friends, moments I thought I had forgotten. They slipped by me like ghosts, tantalizing yet just out of reach. Then there she was again, the woman from the locket. Her figure emerged from the mist, reaching out toward me. "You must remember," she urged, her voice echoing eerily. "You hold the key." "Key to what?" I demanded, frustration and fear intertwining. The images swirled faster, blurring my grasp of reality. I felt overwhelmed. All I wanted was answers, not this confusion. "What do you want from me?" In response, the vision brightened and crystallized into a single moment. A family gathering in our old living room. Laughter filled the air, but there was something off. I noticed shadows lurking in the corners, watching, waiting. My pulse quickened. The shadows were watching me. I ripped my gaze from the scene and turned back to the woman, desperation clawing at my throat. "Why are you here?" "If you don't confront the truth, you'll be lost," she said gravely. Then the light flickered and she began to fade. "Wait," I shouted. "Don't leave me." But the chamber trembled, shaking with a shuddering force. I stumbled back as the images shattered like glass. I felt the pull of the void return, stronger this time, and I fell into darkness once more. Then just as quickly I was thrust back into the attic, gasping for air, hands still gripping the locket. Everything was as I had left it, and yet the weight of the unknown pressed heavily on my chest. The air was thick with silence, but now I knew two things. I was not alone, and I had to uncover the truth buried deep in my past. That was when I heard a soft whisper behind me, chilling my breath. "You shouldn't have come back." The words lingered in the musty air, sending a shiver down my spine. I turned slowly, apprehension twisting in my gut. There at the edge of the attic where shadows clung the hardest, stood the figure, the woman from the locket. Her face was clearer now, and though etched with anguish, there was also something reassuring about her presence. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, the question feeling ridiculously inadequate. "I'm tied to this place just as you are, Liam," she said softly, her voice echoing like the distant whispers I had heard before. "You need to face what happened. Only then can we be free." A thick fog of trepidation wrapped around my thoughts. "What do you mean tied? What must I face?" The figure's gaze turned solemn, and I felt an urgency simmering in the room. "You came back for a reason. The house holds the memories of those who came before. The darkness in these walls is born from unfinished business. You must remember." I swallowed hard, wrestling with my fear. Memories danced at the fringes of my mind, joyous family moments entwined with shadowy figures watching from the corners. "What business?" Before she could respond, the attic filled with a cacophony of whispers, louder than I had ever heard. They clawed at my mind like frantic fingers desperate for attention. The shadows thickened around me, urging me to recall something hidden, something significant that lay buried beneath confusion and fear. "Liam," the woman's voice cut through the chaos, "you need to recall, deep within, you are destined to break the cycle." The shadows faltered, and I saw flashes of intertwined lives. Laughter shattered by fear, foundations hidden under despair. I felt certain I had been here before, but every attempt to grasp the memory slipped through my fingers like mist. I took a step back, suddenly overwhelmed, and in that instant the locket swung open in my grasp, revealing the two photographs. The woman's face locked eyes with mine, and it hit me like a cold wave. She looked like my mother. A rush of memories flooded my senses, moments spent in the house, tales told in hushed tones, things that had been obscured by time. "Your family made a pact," she said, her expression grave. "One that required sacrifice to keep the darkness at bay." "What sacrifice?" I demanded, the weight of realization pressing against my chest. She hesitated. "To protect you, they obscured the truth. But in doing so, they forged chains of their own." The whispers crescendoed, the shadows roiling around me. My heart raced as a singular thought crystallized in my mind like glass forming under fire. I had the choice to break those chains, but it wouldn't come without a cost. "I'm not sure I can handle this," I cried out in frustration, feeling the darkness encroach closer. "You can," the woman insisted, each word ringing with certainty. "But you must choose." I closed my eyes, grappling with the weight of her words. I could feel the energy in the room shifting as if waiting for my decision. A deep breath steadied the tremors in my body. "What do I have to do?" "Embrace the past," she murmured, the shadows dancing with newfound vigor, reflecting my waning resolve. "Face the truth of what this house has concealed." The memory of my parents' laughter morphed into an overwhelming sense of loss, but nestled in that grief was an echo of empowerment. I realized, this home, our history, it was not only shackled with darkness but also sparked with hope. To carry their legacy forward, I had to confront the past, to acknowledge the shadows. As I opened my eyes, the woman nodded solemnly, as if she sensed my newfound determination. The room hummed with potential, energy crackling in the air. As I stepped toward the darkness, my heart racing. "I'll break the cycle," I declared, uncertainty laced with resolve. Just then the shadows pulsed violently, creating a whirlwind around me. The echoes of whispers gathered like a storm, and as I stood at the precipice of the unknown, I felt a sudden surge of power. And then the darkness enveloped me once more, but this time it felt different. Less like a cage, more like a release. In that moment, the attic trembled and shuddered, and I caught glimpses of memories, figures shifting behind old photographs, relationships tangled in secrets and sacrifices. I braced myself against the arriving onslaught, but just as quickly as it had come, everything stopped. The tempest of shadows withdrew, and I found myself alone in the attic, out of breath but filled with clarity. As my surroundings returned to their stillness, a profound silence hung in the air. I was left with a palpable sense of freedom, but the unanswered questions lingered. What had truly happened in this house? What exact sacrifice had my family made? I glanced around, hoping for one final glimpse of the woman, of her guidance, but she was gone. That night was a turning point, but I understood that even though the immediate danger had passed, the house still held its secrets and stories. Would the shadows return? Would something else rise from the depths of the unknown? I stepped down the attic stairs, uncertainty shadowing my steps. I moved out of the house a few days later, leaving behind the haunting echo of the past. I still think about it sometimes, the things that surfaced and the decisions left unmade. But mostly, I try not to think about what truly lay beneath the surface. As I closed the door behind me for the last time, I glanced back at the old house, a silent sentinel steeped in history, mysteries, and the memories of all those who had once called it home. The truth remained buried, and while I may have escaped, I knew the cycle of secrets had not ended, merely transformed.